The 2025 NASCAR season is less than 2 weeks away. What can fans expect to see this season? The perfect person to ask these questions is veteran journalist Jeff Gluck with The Athletic. He joined me for a one-on-one conversation about a variety of topics, including who is on the hot seat in 2025, will Kyle Busch or Ty Gibbs earn a win this season, and who are his picks for the championship for? And now I'd like to welcome back to the channel for his first appearance in 2025 from The Athletic, Jeff Gluck. Hey Jeff, thanks for joining me today.
Of course, always happy to be on. Even though I kind of like stiffed you last year, not even on purpose,
I know.
but
It's
you're like, I mean, I think I came on once last year, but then the second time I kept dropping the ball and you kept saying during the playoffs, let's get on there. And I'd be like, oh yeah. And then I kept blowing it. So I'm trying to atone. See, this is part of this is another New Year's resolution. I'm trying to work on being, here I am. Like I'm being more responsible this year. That's the word I'm looking for. More responsible.
all right. A more responsible Jeff Gluck has joined us. Thanks. All
Yeah,
right,
there you
Jeff.
go.
So let's get started. So, the off season, we're wrapping up the off season, and so silly season, the lawsuit. I know those have been the big topics, but I really want to find out what have you done outside of covering NASCAR in these last 3 months? Something fun? Have you gone on any trips? What has Jeff done outside of NASCAR?
Well, I don't really get much time to myself because I have a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old. So pretty much the days are like either working or, parenting, I guess. Which I mean, hey, that can be fun sometimes, but as you know, but sometimes it's kind of stressful and draining. But we did go to Disneyland for a couple days in December.
Nice.
That was a pretty good time. The only downside of that is that like the girls are at an age now where they like really could we taken them before and they were kind of too young and they
Right.
liked it, but then they didn't talk about it again. Now it's like every day, hey, can we go back to Disneyland? When are we going back to Disneyland? I mean, well, first of all, we live in Colorado, so it's not like we can just drive there. Second of all, like it's kind of expensive. I mean, like
Yeah.
2 days at Disneyland is like really expensive,
Yeah.
really, really expensive. I don't just have that kind of like be like, oh yeah, let's just go. I mean, like, so now I'm like, oh boy, what have I done? Because they're like, when's our next trip? When are we going back on those rides? And I'm like, yeah, I don't know, anytime soon, but yeah. So I may have made a mistake with that whole thing.
So you created a Disney monster.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
So speaking of silly season, Stewart-Haas dismantled over the past season into the off season. I'm just curious what you think of the four drivers coming up in 2025. I think there's an obvious answer, but I'm kind of curious what you think happens to all four Stewart-Haas drivers in 2025. Who do you think has the most success?
Well, I mean, look, obviously Chase Briscoe is going to be in the best situation, right? Like
Right.
he is getting into a really good car with a really and he's motivated himself first of all,
Right.
right? Because he's even said, I mean, look, if I can't regularly win and run up front in a great car like this, like do I even deserve to be in cup kind of thing, right? Like this is the opportunity that you work for and hope for. And his crew chief is equally as motivated, right? Because he's got into a situation where I mean, Truex Martin wasn't really around the last couple of years. He moved to New Jersey. He split time between New Jersey and Florida. He wouldn't really, he'd be out of pocket for most of the week. And then, but it worked for him. Like they could still run well, but in terms of like being in the trenches with the team at the shop, like Chase Briscoe's there like all the time, right? So, it's they are both motivated and they both got a great opportunity. That said, they both have the most pressure on them because let's say they don't win or they come out of the gate slow or you get to May and you're like, damn, what's wrong with this team? Like
Right.
they're behind their teammates. You got that's a lot of pressure. Whereas like, I'd say like a Gregson going to front row, it's sort of like, all right. I mean, people are like, hey, he could do good, but if he does just okay, people are like, well,
Right.
he's a front row and they're okay, but we didn't expect him to like make the playoffs. You know what I'm saying? So
Right.
it's there's all these different situations. And then like, like say like a Cole Custer, kind of situation.
Mhm.
Even though he wasn't in Cup and wasn't one of those four, but like I look at him and I actually think he's in the opposite of any of those, where he's in complete upside.
Right. Yeah.
Because if he does anything in like the Haas factory team type equipment, um, people are gonna be like, "Whoa, oh my gosh!" Like we didn't expect anything out of them. Like I think it's actually a little bit more dangerous for like a Priest, where people are starting to have expectations. Oh, RFK, there's some talk,
Right.
there's some buzz. Maybe he's gonna have a big year. Could he? Maybe, but I would rather be in almost a situation kind of like a Noah, where you're not going to have a lot of pressure on you. You go out, you run well, you surprise some people, you get people talking about you. People are going, "Hey, that's awesome." Unless you're going to be like Chase Briscoe and you're like, you are winning. And then it's like, okay, this
Right.
is what we thought he could do. Um, because so much of NASCAR these days is really just about what the expectations are, what your teammates are doing. Um, and yeah, I mean, I think just sorry to not to skip over him, but Josh Berry's kind of in the same situation as Priest almost, right? Like
Right.
it's like, okay, you're in a Penske car, you kind of have to perform, you should do better. I'd rather be in Noah's spot, honestly.
Right. So another storyline I think people are talking about is Kyle Busch obviously ended his streak of consecutive seasons with a win last year at 19. So does he get back in the win column and start a new streak in 2025?
I feel like I'm going to talk out of both sides of my mouth here because I picked him. I'm picking him to not make the playoffs.
Okay.
So I guess I'm saying that he's not, at least in the regular season. But I feel like I'm being stupid at the same time because it's still like what you're like. It's Kyle Busch. He could win. He could have won several races last year,
Right.
and you know it seems foolish to pick against him. But man, except for like a couple brief flashes with RCR, like Dylan at Richmond out of nowhere, like I don't know what I want to see more out of them before I can sit here and go, oh yeah, they're definitely on the rise, or they're definitely back, or they're definitely turning the corner, or they're making the right moves, or they're going the right direction. Like I'm sure they're going to get better, because I don't see them getting worse. They had a really miserable season, but
Sure.
um, I could also see where like again, kind of like with the Briscoe situation. Let's say Kyle and the number 8 team come out slow, and they're it's kind of a continuation of last year in a way. Like they're just not in the mix. They're not leading laps.
Hmm.
He's struggling to finish top 10, top 15. I think that could turn sour real quick because he's going to be looking for a way out of there. Um, that could be a very toxic dynamic if things don't go well to start, and then he's like, "Get me the heck out of this place," kind of thing.
Right.
Now, if it all goes well, I could see some momentum. I could see him winning a couple races. But listen, this year is going to be, there's no rules changes in terms of the cars.
Right.
Um, nobody's getting a new car. What is the magic dynamic that is going to change for teams from last year to this year? Unless, some personnel could move around.
Right.
Okay. But like, what are teams going to do to make a big leap? That seems like a tall order because
Yeah.
it's a lot of continuation of last year. So it's just tough for me to be like, oh yeah, Kyle's going to turn it around. I mean, because he's Kyle, you want to say that, but is he? I don't know.
Well, that was actually kind of started to answer my next question is, so if things do go sour and he doesn't win, when are we looking, what month, what race, 10 races in, 12 races in, when are we looking to see Kyle Busch is starting to show some frustrations and he's starting to, it looks like he might be out the door from RCR. What time frame are you expecting that to start happening?
I don't know if we'll see it at all. I think it's kind of a different Kyle Busch now in the way that he shows that. I don't think we see the stomping off Kyle as much anymore, or just like the sort of the petulant antics or something that we would have seen 10 years ago. And part of that is because it almost seems like he's sort of just resigned. I mean, look at how he handled last year, right? Like it more just seemed like he was just beat down and discouraged rather than lashing out or expressing outwardly his frustration. Um, it just seemed like we would try to get stuff out of him in media sessions. Like, how are you taking all this? Like, this is the worst year of your career, maybe. And like, how are you doing with this? And it would just sort of be like, yeah, I mean, what can you do kind of thing, right? And
Yeah.
so I don't know, even if things go bad, I don't necessarily see, I don't know that we would see publicly it all falling apart or something like that. Like, um, I don't know if it's being a dad of two that does that or being more conscious of that or just feeling like he's had such a long time now where he hasn't been that guy that's running up front all the time, leading laps. Maybe you adjust your expectations or something. I don't know, but um, I don't really foresee that. Now watch this. I'll be totally wrong, right? But um, I don't know. I think he's a little bit different.
So outside of Kyle, and you mentioned a few minutes ago, you were talking about Chase Briscoe. Outside of him, who do you think is on the hot seat this year? Like pressure to perform? Because I know last year Daniel Suarez kind of came under the microscope, Alex Bowman multiple times at the end of the year, even in the playoffs, whether it was real or imagined. So who do you feel like this year is on the hot seat and really has to up their performance to continue next for 2026?
I think it's a couple of the same guys you mentioned. I mean, Bowman is the one that comes to mind first, just because that there was already talk about him losing his ride um, in favor of Justin Haley last year, right? And then now that Justin Haley's sitting over there, it's sort of like an alliance team, and Hendrick and Spire have a good relationship, and um, I do think Ally loves Bowman, and Bowman did make the playoffs, by winning Chicago and saved himself, and I think he will have a good year, but I'm definitely worried about that for him if he doesn't. Um, I mean, I think Suarez has got to step up just because Zilich seems to be coming pretty fast here.
Yeah.
Um, he's already going to make his Cup debut this year, and this is his rookie season of Xfinity. But we've seen people go from one season of Xfinity to Cup
Mhm.
before. So, um, yeah, I mean, obviously, Chastain's not going anywhere there.
Right.
SVG, it's just going to be his rookie year, and that's a guy that can win road course racing. They're not going to like boot him after 1 year. With Zilich in the wings, you might be able to tell Zilich, hey, we want you to spend one more year in Xfinity, regardless of how well you do or something. But these teams are capped at 3 cars now into the new
Right.
charter deal, and Suarez, the good thing about him is, he does have a lot of sponsorship backing, and um, so that should play in his favor. But he got pretty badly outrun at times last year,
Mhm.
and that Atlanta win saved him, right? But like,
Right.
if you don't have that and you're getting your butt kicked by your teammates, that's not good in the same equipment, especially in this day and age. I'd almost say the same for Bubba, but like I think Bubba has so much sponsorship and is so much the foundation of 2311. I don't think they're, gonna like get rid of him, but like Bubba's got to step up this year and run closer to where Reddick is running because I mean Reddick made the final four and Bubba didn't make the playoffs. So
Right.
come on, you've gotta, and he's got a new crew chief now. So it's, that sort of excuse is being thrown out, right? Like, okay, it's
Right.
not the crew chief, right?
Right.
Like, so you gotta show something, and he knows that obviously. But yeah, those are some of the guys that I would think have something to prove.
Nothing, no one that I think has something to prove, but I'm just curious what you think about Ty Gibbs. Does he get a win finally this year?
I don't know, like, man, they started off maybe the first 2/3 of the season last year, like really strong, and
Right.
then right before the playoffs, I feel like it kind of started to crumble for them a little bit,
Yep.
and he almost fell all the way out. He slid way down the points, and then the playoffs were kind of a mess for them. and they really didn't end well at all. That was weird because it felt like he had been making a lot of progress, and you're
Hmm.
like, this kid's fast and he's doing what we need to see out of him. And then you're just like, wow, that was kind of odd. What happened? I mean, JGR as a whole didn't win a race in the last half of last season. So,
Right.
you could maybe say, well, I don't know, maybe that they lost a little bit of speed as a whole, but yeah, things went south for him. So, he's got a new crew chief now. Um, the thing is about Ty is like, obviously you lose, he'll never be on the hot seat, right? Like he has nothing to,
Right.
he has a job for life essentially, right? So, but I did pick him to make the playoffs this year, but I have a few reservations just because he can't start out like he did at the how he left off last year because that
Right.
was concerning. But I think they can. I think he can get it together. He's very talented, obviously.
Right. Let's talk about one storyline for 2025 that you have your eye on, Jeff. Anything that you think is going to be a top storyline that people should pay attention to?
I think the thing I'm most curious about, we talked about like the status quo part of it, right?
Mhm.
Like probably not a lot's going to change in the power dynamic. But the one team that could kind of upset the dynamics a little bit is Spire
Right.
because, you Hocevar came in and ran so well as a rookie last year that he ran LaJoy out of a job by midseason.
Right.
And he kind of showed them like, hey, like, look what our cars can do. And he's fast. But now you're bringing in Michael McDowell, who, with his crew chief from front row, so they already are ready to go, and he's, they're gonna, you would think more resources at Spire than they do at front row, and growing organization, all that stuff, and you have Rodney Childers coming in with Justin Haley, so I mean that could be really. Now I have McDowell in the playoffs. I don't have Hocevar or Haley, but I could see that being totally wrong. I could see Haley making it for sure, right? Like Roddy Childers giving him good cars, and Haley's a good driver. We haven't really seen exactly what he can do in a great car yet by any
Right.
means. So, I'm curious about that for sure. Like, and that could really shift things, right? Because traditionally, I mean, we haven't looked at Spire and been like, well, they're going to take a playoff spot or two. So if they do, what does that mean for the rest of the field?
Right.
Who does that leave out? Right. So, will they win? I don't know. I could see, McDowell winning. Um, it's tough to, I could see them all, running top 20 in points or something, but is that going to be enough just to make it on points? You kind of got to win these days. So
Right.
that's why I'm picking McDowell. I just think he's the veteran of that group to lead them. But yeah, I mean, they could surprise some people. So that's one thing I think to keep an eye on.
All right. So, a couple final questions, Jeff. So, your 12 questions is always a really good read. And I'm just curious, how long in advance do you select a driver and who can fans expect you to talk to this season?
Well, I'm okay. So going back to being more responsible that I talked about at the beginning of the podcast and being more
Right.
on top of it. A lot of times, there's it's tough for me to schedule people too far out because I have a part of the 12 questions where it's like I'm trying to ask somebody a question for the next guy.
Right.
And if I schedule people too far out and then their PR rep says, "Oh, actually he can't do it that day or that weekend or whatever," then all of a sudden they're out of order. And so I have somebody 2 weeks ago that asked a question for the next guy. Now he's not the next guy.
Right.
So I have to like text the driver and be like, "Oh, I'm really sorry to bother you, but could you give me another question?" If I even have the person's number,
Mhm.
or, try to come up with something else. Or, so typically I'm not amazing about booking it far out because I'm almost a little spooked, but, um, I need to get better at just, having a more laid out. But I do know, I mean, unless I'm going to jinx it, the first one for like the sixth or seventh straight year to kick it off is going to be Joey Logano. So
Yeah.
he's been in the first leadoff spot for a while now. He agreed to be first again.
Okay.
So that's who I know is going to be first. Usually I try to start the season with some of the really good talkers who are good with whatever question it can be.
Right.
So like I'll probably go to Chase Briscoe pretty early, maybe
Mhm.
second or something like that. So then you start to get into the guys where you're like, uh-oh, I don't know if I'm going to get good answers or not. Some of the drier kind of guys who are just like, this could be a pulling teeth on this one.
All right, final two questions, and both are prognostications from you. So, your good race poll, I'm interested based on past history and your knowledge in 2025, what track do you think is going to get the best results and what track do you think is going to get the worst results?
Hmm. Well, uh, Kansas has really consistently gotten some great numbers lately.
Right.
Um, Darlington too, but Kansas has really kind of shown itself as like this amazing place now. It got the number one all time spot last year with that super close race with
Right.
Larson winning. Um, so just off top of my head, I would say Kansas will be the top one. Now you could look at like you could say, well, Texas has historically struggled, but the short tracks in the next gen era seem to have been worse. But that said, you look at the tires they've been using have the option tires, the softer tires have seemed to help things.
Right.
You would have said like a Richmond before, but like Richmond last year was pretty crazy, at least the finish.
Right.
Actually, both because like you had a late restart that
Mhm.
Truex lost because Denny jumped it in the first one, and then
Right.
Dylan had his shenanigans in the second one. Now they only have one race, but and then you look at Martinsville. Like I don't know, the tire did seem to be a better race in the fall there.
Right.
Race manipulation aside, um, Bristol people really didn't like in the fall, but that was because they were expecting the crazy tire wear race
Sure.
like they saw in the spring. So I guess it's a long way of saying I'm kind of tempted to pick one of the short tracks, but the tires are hopefully going to be better this year. So I don't know. I guess just for the sake of making a pick, um, I might go. I hate to do this, but I might go Martinsville just because it seemed to struggle, and we'll see how the tire does. I guess we'll see how the tire does in the spring race, and
Yeah.
that'll determine how it's going to be.
Okay, last question. And you've mentioned a couple times who you have in your playoffs. So I want to know who you think will make the championship four and ultimately win the title. And I know it's not Joey Logano because it's an odd year. So who do you predict makes the final four and will hoist the Bill France Cup in Phoenix?
So Bob Pockers posted a video from the content day that they had with the drivers. I wasn't invited to that, by the way, which I'm still sad about. Shouldn't they just invite all of us to the content day? I mean,
I would
can you
think.
not give 15 minutes? They're all going around to all these stations, like
Right.
for NBC, Fox, Amazon, the tracks, recording like funny games and promos. Could they not just have like the media in a room and like the drivers pop in for 10 minutes? And we haven't hardly heard from the drivers at all.
Right.
And now it's race week and like we had to write stories and
Yeah.
like, and we're not going to hear from a lot of them until Daytona 500, maybe
Yeah.
like, or Daytona Media Day. Like, it'd be nice to,
Right.
get to hear from the drivers. We used to have a whole media tour,
Right.
4 days. We'd go to all the shops on buses, like 4 days in the middle of January. Now we got nothing.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, isn't there like a happy medium here? Just ducking you're already, all the drivers are already there at this content days they're
Right.
doing. Anyway, sorry, that's my complaint.
Preaching to the choir, buddy.
Uh, So Bob got to go, and he asked Kyle Larson about the championship kind of thing, and Larson said, "Hey, look, I mean, I think we could win 20 races and then not win the championship because I would be surprised because if a Penske driver is in the final four and they're at Phoenix, they're so good at Phoenix, I think they kind of have it on lock. And you know what? I think Kyle Larson's right because Hendrick Motorsports talked multiple times last year Cliff Daniels, Jeff Gordon. Emphasis we're putting on Phoenix. We are going to get better at Phoenix. Penske still was the class of the field at Phoenix. So,
Yeah.
it's like, man, I just don't know how you beat them. And so the driver that's most likely to get there for me from Penske in terms of consistency is Ryan Blaney. Because Joey Logano, I mean, he seems to be hit or miss in the regular season.
Right.
So, I think Blaney's going to make it. I think Larson's going to make it. I think Christopher Bell is still on the rise. He gets back there. He should have made it last year, obviously.
Of course.
And then I'll pick William Byron. And so, it's not going out on a limb by any means on any of them. But I had Tyler Reddick at this time last year, partly because Homestead was in the playoffs. So Homestead is not only not in the playoffs now, it's not in round 3. Now round 3 of Talladega. So you're like, well, who's going to be able to get through? You got to go Vegas, Talladega, Martinsville to get through it. So, you have to have really good Vegas and really good Martinsville. So that's why I'm going Larson, Blaney, Bell, Byron. And then, I have Blaney winning it because I think Penske, until proven otherwise, at this point, you just have to start going Penske championships as long as the championship race is still at Phoenix, which, by the way, what are we doing, folks? Can we not? Come on now. Like, this is ridiculous. Let's move it somewhere else, please.
Do you get the feeling, though, that this is probably the last year that we'll move somewhere else? Because I kind of get the sense that they're talking about moving it, right?
I mean, I definitely, yes. But then I also would have said the same thing last year. Like, all right, this is definitely going to be the last year. Like, it sounds like they're really going to move it. And then you're like, nope, still there.
Right.
Okay. All right. Every time, Jordan Bianchi's always breaking the schedule. And so he'll like tell me what the schedule is before he, he's like, oh, I'm hearing this. And I remember last year, I can't remember where I was or whatever, but I just remember him saying, and by the way, it sounds like Phoenix is going to be the championship race again. I just remember like just dropping my head for like 30 seconds without saying anything. Just like, just like, come on. Like, it's just, please get the championship race somewhere where it's like an amazing race worthy of the championship. I get they sell out, but that can't be everything,
Right. Well, one last thing, based on who you're predicting to be the champion in Ryan Blaney, Jeff, I guess what you're saying to fans of Ford is, as they've done in the past several years, don't even worry about what they do the first dozen races because they're probably not going to win, but they'll find their stride at the halfway point and be fine going on the rest of the season.
I think actually this year they don't really have an excuse to not be fast because they don't, it's not, again, they don't have a new car. There's no package changes or something. So why wouldn't Blaney be able to come out? Why wouldn't Penske be able to run well at Phoenix and Martinsville pretty quick off the bat here in the spring and win races? You know what I mean? Like there shouldn't be an excuse. I wouldn't think so. Yeah, I mean, clearly you can't worry about it anymore. Clearly the regular season has nothing to do. I mean, Logano, was he even mentioned at all, throughout last summer as a championship contender? Even after he won Nashville, nobody was like, oh, and hey, Logano's going to be the playoff. Make sure to watch out for Joey Logano. He's like 15th in points. Oh, we got to watch out for him. Like, that's one thing that I'm really interested to see how it evolves this year. It's like, we have this weekly podcast, right? And it's like, and there's all serious radio and we're writing articles and we're asking like, who's the favorites now? Who's the championship contenders now? I think I just have to keep reminding myself, nobody, because you can't, like, for The Athletic, I was writing like these weekly, like little power rankings and my weekly takeaways. And I had Christopher Bell through like 9 weeks of the playoffs. He was number one. I had him number one going in the playoffs, my championship favorite, all the way up until Martinsville, through Martinsville, that week, he's the number one championship pick. Suddenly he just gets eliminated. And you're just like, okay, well, I guess he's not the number one championship pick anymore because he's not even in it. So it's really tough to just identify and say, well, this is going to be this way, and this is going to be this way. I mean, Larson is another great example.
Yeah.
Guy wins 6 races. And you're just like, well, yeah, nope, not going to the championship. Okay. So how do we like the NASCAR media and everybody talk about NASCAR throughout this year while acknowledging like, yeah, this guy won his 4th race and he's leading the regular season title and he has a gob of playoff points, but like, we don't even know if he's making the final 4. So,
No.
like, I know it's weird. It's really weird, but I think we have to start acknowledging that, like,
Right.
instead of saying this guy is gonna, yeah, he's a lock. He's a lock for the championship. I don't think so.
No. There's so much uncertainties and so many things and variables can happen. So we'll see. I think it'll be an interesting season and looking forward to covering it alongside you. So Jeff, I really appreciate you taking the time to visit with me. Look forward to having you again on the channel later this year and look forward to seeing you a couple weeks at Daytona.
Yeah, it's going to be here soon. Hopefully warmer weather for both of us.
Right.
And we'll see what happens. It's going to be a tone setter for sure because, is this going to be a year where you get a lot of random sort of different winners? I mean, if you get another Byron winning the Daytona 500 kind of thing, one of the expected names, maybe not, but it could start off the year with a Stenhouse or a Centric. You're like, okay, game on. So we'll see you down there.
Yep, it'll be fun. Thanks, Jeff. I appreciate it. Take care, bud.
Thanks. Appreciate it.